Bosnia, it's a nation that many people don't really learn about, especially not outside of Eastern Europe. And it's a shame, really, because even though the nation is quite new, only founded about 30 years ago, the area has a very rich history. Um, and not only that, but the political system of Bosnia today is is very intriguing. It's immensely complicated, but it's unique from any other political system found around the world, and that's kind of why we decided to create this documentary, um, in order to educate people about this beautiful nation and its political system. We'll start by introducing Bosnia. The Bosnian flag has a blue field with a yellow triangle shape, and seven full stars and two half stars on the hypotenuse of the triangle. The triangle represents the three constituent peoples of Bosnia Herzegovina: the Bosnians, the Serbs, and Croats. It also represents the map of Bosnia, since the country of Bosnia also has a triangle sword shape. The stars represent Europe, and the line of stars is meant to go on forever, hence the two half stars at the top and the bottom. The colors of the flag, blue, white, and yellow, represent peace. Bosnia-Herzegovina is geographically located in the Balkans in Southeast Europe. The neighboring countries of Bosnia are Croatia, Serbia, and Montenegro. The capital and largest city is Sarajevo. As said before, Bosnia and Herzegovina is home to three ethnic constituent peoples, namely Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats, plus a number of smaller groups including Jews and Roma. Bosnia-Herzegovina is a religiously diverse country with three main religions. Muslims make up 50.7% of the population and are namely Bosnians. Orthodox Christians make up 30.75% of the population and are namely Serbs. And then there are also Catholics, which make up 15.19% of the population and are mainly Croats. Now we'll get into a bit of the history. Bosnia was divided into military administrative districts, or sanjaks, during the Ottoman Empire. The Kingdom of Bosnia fell in 1463, followed by the gradual fall of Herzegovina to the Ottomans by 1482, after more than 65 years of attacks by the Ottomans. Bosnia differed from other Balkan lands during that time, since a large part of the native population converted to Islam. It took more than 100 years for Muslims to become an absolute majority. The fundamental reason for the enormous growth of the Muslim population in Bosnia lies in the earlier religious history of the state of Bosnia. Whereas other Balkan states, such as Serbia, had benefited from the church, Bosnia had seen competition in most areas between the Bosnian Church and the Roman Catholic Church, both of which operated only out of monastic houses. This made Christianity weaker in Bosnia compared to Bosnian neighboring states. Bosnia mostly accepted Islam due to economic reasons, namely the fact that the prosperous cities of Sarajevo and Mostar were already mostly Muslim, which made it impossible to live a full civic life there without converting to Islam. Other motives included the privileged legal status enjoyed by Muslims and, possibly, a desire to avoid the poll tax on non-Muslims, though Muslims were subject, unlike Christians, both to the alms tax and to the duties of general military service. But the traditional belief that Bosnian noblemen converted en masse to Islam in order to keep their estates has been largely disproved by modern historians. After the Austro-Hungarian annexation in 1878, Bosnia and Herzegovina was governed by a special joint commission under the Common Ministry of Finance, especially by Common Finance Minister Benjamin Calais, a specialist in South Slav history. He directed Bosnian policy from 1882 to 1903. The Austro-Hungarian rule wanted to preserve the Ottoman administrative division, and Ottoman laws were only gradually replaced or supplemented. Benjamin Calais generally succeeded at his job, but failed to develop a Bosnian national consciousness to insulate the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina from the growing movements. By the mid-19th century, the Roman Catholic and Orthodox people of Bosnia and Herzegovina started to identify themselves as Croats and Serbs, respectively. During the first decade of the 20th century, new national organizations of Muslims, Serbs, and Croats functioned as embryonic political parties. In response, Calais' successor, Freiherr Burian, granted a degree of autonomy in religious affairs to both the Muslims and the Serbs of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Going further in time to World War I, Bosnia and Herzegovina was still under Austro-Hungarian rule, and repressive measures were applied to those Bosnian Serbs whose loyalty was suspect. At the end of the war, Bosnian politicians from each of the three main communities followed the political leaders of Croatia and Slovenia in throwing off Habsburg rule and joining in the creation of a new South Slav state, the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. Between World War I and World War II, a lot of wars were fought between the Croats, Serbs, and Bosnians. There was, for example, an upcoming movement of fascist Croats who exterminated over 4,000 Jews and massacred Serbs on a large scale. Due to these massacres, it comes to no surprise that there is a lot of bad blood between Serbs, Bosnians, and Croats. On the 31st of January, 1946, the new Constitution of the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia, modeled after the Constitution of the Soviet Union, established 6 republics, an autonomous province, and an autonomous district with a capital city, Belgrade. Marshal Tito was in total control of Yugoslavia, and all opposition was eliminated. Yugoslavia solved the national issue of nations and nationalities in a way that all nations and nationalities had the same right. Moreover, according to official statistics, from the 1950s to the early 1980s, Yugoslavia was among the fastest growing countries, approaching the ranges reported in South Korea. After the death of Josip Broz Tito in 1980, Yugoslavia slowly but noticeably started to fall apart. Soon after the fall of his dictatorship, members of Yugoslavia, especially Croatia and Serbia, started practicing and implementing nationalism in the society more and more, since the socio-economic condition in Yugoslavia was declining. In the 1990s, the peak of nationalist propaganda by Croatian and Serbian leaders increased tension, and the possibility of a conflict was growing. The war officially started on the 26th of June 1991, after the secession of Slovenia from Yugoslavia. Officially, the Bosnian War started almost 1 year later, on April 6, 1992, the same day when the USA and EEC recognized Bosnia as an independent state. The 4-year war after the fall of Yugoslavia was stopped after the signing of the peace agreement negotiated in Dayton, Ohio in November of 1995. The warring parties agreed to peace and to a single sovereign state known as Bosnia and Herzegovina, composed of 2 parts, the largely Serb-populated Republika Srpska and mainly Croat Bosniak-populated Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as the jointly administered Brčko district. The final agreement was the result of skillful diplomacy, political trade-offs, and the military pressure being exerted on the main warring parties. While Dayton was a path-breaking, war-ending, and peacekeeping tool, it has not proven to be an effective framework for allowing true post-war peacebuilding and the political reconstruction of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now we continue to the main part of the video, the political system of Bosnia. As mentioned before, Bosnia has a diverse history, and thus consists of 3 main ethnic groups: Bosnians, Croats, and Serbs. Therefore, on a national level, the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina consists of the tripartite presidency, council of ministers, and parliament assembly. As a result of the history between the three ethnic groups, the political system is also divided as such. For that reason, Bosnia and Herzegovina have three presidents: a Bosnian president, a Serbian president, and a Croatian president. The three presidents rotate every 8 months as chair of presidency, and because of this complicated system, even the Bosnian public usually does not know which president is in charge at any given point. Even though there's a chair of presidency, all major projects in Bosnia and Herzegovina have to be approved by all three presidents, which explains why the country's development is happening at a slow pace. In the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are four levels of government: government on the national level or state level, on entity, canton, and municipality level. The executive branch, which is the Council of Ministers, carries out the laws made by the legislative branch. Their duty is that no law is passed unless all three constituent peoples agree upon it. The Council of Ministers, also known as the Government of Bosnia, consists of 9 ministers, appointed by the Parliament Assembly, and they are the executive branch of the government of the state. According to the Constitution, the chairman of the Council of Ministers is nominated by the Presidency and confirmed by the National House of Representatives of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Parliamentary Assembly of Bosnia and Herzegovina is bicameral and it enacts laws, approves the budget, and makes decisions on the sources and the amount of revenue needed for financing the institutions of Bosnia and Herzegovina and its international obligations. The Parliamentary Assembly confirms the appointment of the chair and members of the Council of Ministers, grants consent to ratification of international treaties, and makes decisions on other issues necessary for execution of its own responsibilities. It is composed of two chambers, the House of Representatives and the House of Peoples. The houses of the Parliamentary Assembly perform legislative, informative, and oversight activities and regulate internal organizations and their own operating methods. The House of People is the higher house, and it consists of 5 people from each of the three ethnic groups, and the purpose of the House of People is to oversee that every law that passes is accepted by all three presidents. And the House of People is appointed by Parliament of both entities. The House of Representatives is made up of 42 elected members, from which 2/3 needs to be from the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina and 1/3 from the Republika Srpska. The 2/3 from the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina are divided equally between Bosniaks and Croats. The number of chairs per political party is determined based on the percentage of popular votes accumulated in general elections. Yet, Bosnia is divided into two equal entities, Republika Srpska and the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and, based on the Dayton Agreement from 1995, both of them have their own constitution which has to be in compliance with the constitution of the state. 2 out of the 3 presidents of the tripartite presidency are chosen from the territory of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, of which one is Bosniak and the other one is Croat. Moreover, the entity has its own president and has its own House of Representatives and House of People. The House of Representatives consists of 98 members which receive a number of seats proportional to percentage accumulated in general elections, and the House of People consists of 58 members that are elected by the Cantonal Assembly, which is elected in local elections. To make things even more complicated, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina consists of 10 federal units, the cantons, which have their own constitution, parliament, government, and judicial powers. In total, there are 11 constitutions, governments, and legislators in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Cantons operate under the laws of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina as a whole. Moreover, they are further divided into 79 municipalities and cities, which constitute the local self-government units. They hold both executive and legislative powers. On the other hand, the smaller entity, Republika Srpska, chooses a Serb member of the presidency of Bosnia. The Republika Srpska is vested with all state functions and powers which are not expressly granted to the central government of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The unicameral parliament, known as the National Assembly of Republika Srpska and the Council of the People, exercises the legislative power, whereas the government owns the executive power. The government consists of a prime minister, 16 ministers, and a president who together hold executive power. Local self-government is one of the basic principles of Republika Srpska's constitution. The 57 municipalities have both exclusive and shared competences with the Republika Srpska. District Brčko was previously considered a municipality divided into two parts, one in the Republika Srpska and the other one in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. The final award was brought by an international arbitration tribunal in 1999 and prescribed the establishment of Brčko as a district. It is since then jointly owned by the entities, but not managed by either. State legislation directly applies to the district, and its fields of competence are nearly the same as the ones of the entities. The assembly of the district of Brčko is chosen during the local elections. The population of Bosnia and Herzegovina have general and local elections every 4 years, and they are carried out with a 2-year span between each other. During the general elections, the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina can vote for one member of presidency, dependent on their permanent place of residence. If one lives in the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, one can vote either for a Croat or Bosniak member of presidency, but not both. Moreover, they can vote for representatives of the cantonal assembly depending on which canton one lives, and for representatives of the House of Representatives of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which are later allocated to the House of Representatives on a national level. However, if one lives in Republika Srpska, one can only vote for a Serbian member of the presidency, the president and the vice president of Republika Srpska, and for the representative of the National Assembly of Republika Srpska. During the local elections, mayors and municipal councils are elected in every municipality and city. One can only vote for the municipality or city that they live in. One of the biggest issues in Bosnia and Herzegovina is that approximately only 50% of people eligible to vote actually do so. Many people are deterred from voting because they do not think their vote will matter and that nothing will ever change for better. However, costs of the printed material for the electoral campaign in Bosnia and Herzegovina are among the highest in the world, and the country spends over half of its gross annual income on the presidential administration. For the largest period after the war in the 1990s, Bosnian authorities were made up of ethno-national parties representing 3 ethnic people in the country, Bosniaks, Serbs, and Croats, burdening citizens with difficult national issues, often threatening new conflicts in the country. It is well known that the leading national Bosniak party, the Party of Democratic Action, is only nominally committed to Bosnia and Herzegovina's progress, with very pale, concrete steps, while the leading Bosnian Serb and Bosnian Croat parties, the Alliance of Independent Social Democrats and the Croatian Democratic Union, openly advocate ethnic division between citizens and the weakening of state institutions. Such a policy makes the country unstable for all its citizens, makes it less attractive to foreign investment, lacks the rule of law, is unattractive to young people, and has a low gross domestic product rate of 3.2%, which is below the European average. In January 2019, Transparency International published the results of the Corruption Perception Index. On a scale of 0 to 100, with 0 representing the highest level of perceived corruption and 100 the lowest level, Bosnia and Herzegovina had a score of 38, sharing a place with countries such as Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and Swaziland. Moreover, Bosnia has the second highest unemployment rate in the world, 35.86%, and approximately 60% of young people are unable to find a job.
How good do you think Bosnian political system is in terms of its functionality?
Well, I think it's a very layered question. I don't think, in short, I don't think the political system of Bosnia and Herzegovina is very functioning, very well functioning, that is. And I think if we're gonna talk about the reasons behind it, I think it's partially because of its setup, which is stemming from the Dayton Peace Agreement, uh, where one of the articles of the agreement serves as the constitution. And it was written by American politicians at the time, which seems quite weird, as I don't think they have a proper knowledge of how Bosnian society works. So the government is set up in a very complicated way, where we have parliaments on a national, federal, or entity level, and then local governments, and in one of the entities, even a canton government. So there's like so many layers that do not communicate well with each other, and um, sometimes the goals of different levels of government are not the same. So the decision making is then very not uniform, and little can be done then.
But do you think that cooperation between the three sides, the Bosniaks, Croats, and Serbs, will ever be possible?
I think such cooperation is possible, but with a um, systemic change in the government structure, because as it is uh, constructed right now, the the three sides have been. I'm not sure, because like the three sides have all been pulling to their side constantly, and I don't think it's a problem of specific ethnic groups within themselves, within society, and their cooperation. It's simply the political structure and the politicians and their cooperation, right? So I think it's beneficial for them, specifically the ruling elite, to constantly have these bickerings and fights between each other, as it generates more uh, economic revenue and political power for them, while the common folk is left um, behind. And I don't think any of the sides, if we're talking about the society, is benefiting from it. So it's gonna be hard to get to a full cooperation between three sides, but it will not happen without a complete change in governmental structure, or a full blown revolution, or something like that.
And as a last question, are you going to vote on general elections 2022?
Hopefully, I will, because although I am planning on doing that, the election system is very complicated, and me not living in Bosnia right now means I have to go through a very complicated process of registering my place of voting outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is just uh, which might turn out to uh, not enable me voting, like in the last elections, for example, because of my move from Bosnia to the Netherlands. I just did not appear on the list of the voters from outside of Bosnia, so I couldn't vote. But yeah, I'm planning to.